Hello everyone, I am your host Warrior Angel. Welcome back to part 8 of the Phoenix Rises. We're starting off this episode with a battle as Alexios is going to try and fight off the armies that have come to reinforce the garrison at Anconia. Now on the face of it, it seems that I'm pretty much in a strong position. Despite the fact that Alexios has such a poor grasp of command at this point, a young peasant girl seems to laugh whenever this man tries to tell him what to do. He's still a better commander than the two captains that he's facing. I outnumber them as well by about 700 men, which is definitely a plus. And having a look at the enemy army, it seems that the main army consists of the spear militia units, as well as 2 units of horse archers and 1 unit of foot archers. Now these spear militia are not that good. In fact, my quarter-toy spearmen can actually handle them pretty well as having higher levels of morale and in this case armor as well. The reinforcement army has 2 units of foot archers as well as this heavy Armenian cavalry, which they've probably hired as mercenaries. You see, I've fought them before with Alexios and they managed to cause quite a few casualties if I remember right. So this is something I'm going to have to keep an eye out for to win out this battle. The balance of power is very much in my favour and I decided with everything in my favour I'm just going to start off and actually fight the sound of the battle now. So see you in a moment. As the battle commenced now, I get the notification that the enemy has brought in their reinforcements. This is something I've always found a bit annoying with Total War games, as I would have personally liked to have a bit more of a random occurrence of when the reinforcements may come, as it could lead quite the interesting approach to battles. As you can see though, I decided to deploy my army originally on the hill, which in fact turned to be pretty useful. I've now got my army in between the 2 enemy forces, and should hopefully be able to get there in time to be able to use my superior numbers against them individually. I've brought my army now to move forward with my Toxote archers in the front line along with all my skirmishing, my javelin throwers and that behind the quarter-toy and my scouter-toy in an attempt to make sure that they can fire over the spearmen's units. I'm bringing my unit of Turcopole cavalry now to try and attack the heavy Armenian cavalry. They're only horse archers, but thankfully the Armenians are not going to be able to catch up with them. And I'm hoping I should be able to cause at least a couple of casualties towards the Armenian cavalry. The more casualties I can kill off now, the less that they're going to do against my men on the charge. As you see now, the Armenian cavalry have started to march up the hill. In fact, my Turcopole cavalry managed to do quite a few casualties. They managed to kill already 12 people with only a few volleys. And with the Armenian cavalry heading straight towards my line, I send in my quarter-toy as quickly as possible. And they're going to be dealt now with being outnumbered pretty much about 4 to 1 at this point, if not by more. I move my Turcopole cavalry around to the rear because I'm hoping to be able to try and use them and their speed in order to catch up with the Armenian cavalry as and when they break. Unfortunately, I don't think this turned out to be the case. I managed to kill off a couple of them now as they decided to rout. But my men weren't able to kill them off in time, and so a few survivors managed to leave the battlefield. With our Armenian cavalry now dealt with, I can start readdressing my front line, ready to receive the charge of the main army. As you can see, it's slowly but surely making its way up on my right flank. I move my Toxote archers to the front line still, so they can take off a couple of shots to go up against the enemy. And I've made sure to keep them on skirmish mode, just in order for them to be able to retreat from the enemy spearmen once they start getting in range. The enemy foot archers have already started to try and attack, as you can see, with their fire arrows, and I decided to try and deal with them by sending both Mintas and Alexios over to deal with the horse archers on the left flank. My Turcopole cavalry managed to kill off some of the Armenian cavalry with their arrows and attacking the hand-to-hand, although it did leave a few of them left to survive. There we go, my Fanatoy now going to charge into the Turkish archers. I have to admit, I've always been a little bit disappointed about it. As you can see here, for example, they've charged in, but the charge themselves doesn't do that much in the way of casualties. In fact, what tends to happen is that they put the lances away, and next minute, all of a sudden, the enemy unit has about 20 plus casualties, if not more, in a few seconds, and as they've managed to put the lances away. Not sure how that works, but it seems to be the case with the Fanatoy. I'm not going to complain if they keep getting the casualties up. With Alexios now saying about how there's a good chance of his men winning the battle, which is pretty good to hear as always, I go back to the left flank where I decide to move both Mintas and Alexios out of combat, as they're currently about to get charged by a unit of spear militia. Thankfully, in Medieval 2, the idea of the rock, paper, scissors approach with regards to horsemen and spearmen isn't the same as it is in something like Attila. but I decided to move them out anyway so I can use their more devastating charge in the future. I used my cortisol spearmen in the meantime to attack down the hill, and as you can see, quite a few of the enemy spear militia have already started to retreat. Most of my units are still relatively strong, not many casualties suffered by them in comparison to the spear militia. As I said earlier, even though my Cortitoi are the only first level sort of spearman units, they're still a lot better than some of the ones available to the Dukes. I decided to use my Turkopol cavalry now just to try and kill off some of the survivors, and I use my Vanatoi now to charge down the hill and try and kill off as much of the spear militia as possible. I want to try and at least capture or kill as many of them as I can, because the less survivors from this battle, the less that's going to be retreated into Anconia, and less men for me to worry about when they actually lay siege to it after the battle. My Turkopol cavalry now is trying to deal with the Turkish archers, who have now decided to try and march away as quickly as possible. And across the battlefield, my troops are charging after the enemy forces. In fact, they've lost so many men now. The enemy has actually lost over half their men, and most of their army has started to retreat. Unfortunately though, for the right flank, it's taken a long time to kill off these horse archers. Despite the fact they are very lightly armoured, and I've got an overwhelming amount of skirmishes and Toxote archers firing down on them. When they're doing that Cantabrian circle, it means it's quite difficult for me to actually hit them, it seems. So I'm slowly but surely wearing them down, although it's taking a lot more arrows and javelins than I would have felt comfortable with. I decided to bring my contesters, they're trying to get closer to try and catch up, and as you can see, they are taking a couple of casualties, but the arrows of the horse archers aren't that bad. And I managed to send a few javelins into the Turkoman cavalry, killing a couple of them. It is quite annoying though, as I said, the Cantabrian circle is difficult for me to actually try and fire on them. So I'm stuck really with having to rely on trying to just use quantity of arrows and missiles rather than the quality of the kill. With my right flank now dealt with, I had moved the camera to keep an eye on what's going on with the retreating enemy forces. When I get a notification that the victory is now mine, I decided to go ahead and continue the battle. I figured the more enemy that I can deal with now, the more people I can capture and kill, the less people are going to make it to Anconia, where even if they manage to just get their units of 10, 15, 20 odd men per unit, those numbers do eventually add up. I decided to try and move time forward a little bit faster just to get this part of the battle, the boring parts, go past quicker, and I ensure that my other troops are catching up with the enemy forces as much as they can. Some of them though you do have to try and deal with in other ways. For example, these Turkoman cavalry, or horse archers, are some of the fastest units in the game. You do need light cavalry or horse archers of your own to try and keep up with them. As you can see, my skirmishers are trying to keep up, unfortunately aren't doing their job. I sent my Turkopol cavalry though in order to go over and try and kill as many of them as possible, and thanks to their bows they managed to kill off a couple of them. But with this Turkoman cavalry now making over the red line of death, victory is now assured for me, and looking on the results, managed to do pretty good for Alexios. Only 210 men lost, with 568 killed and 655 captured. A pretty good result I think for Alexios. Having a look on the individual statistics, it seems that my Scouted unit managed to capture the most prisoners with 157, followed by Alexios with 116. No doubt Alexios told his more trustworthy men to make sure to take as many prisoners as they can rather than try and kill them, in the hopes to preserve some more life once the battle was over with. With everything else now done, I decided to go back to the campaign map. Back on the campaign map now, it seems I have quite a few prisoners to try and deal with, and if I decide to ransom back I can get a nice little sum of money. I have to keep in mind though, what would Alexios do in this situation? He could just go ahead and execute them, and despite hearing what the enemy troops have got to say regarding these different options, but I decided I was going to try and ransom them back to the Seljuks, which would give me a nice little bit of sum of money. Unfortunately though, the Seljuks decided to reject the offer, and I've had no choice but to execute them. To Midi Irene. Despite the number of times I've had to cross swords with these Seljuks, their callousness still surprises me at times. I led the army against the forces sent to relieve the garrison at Iconion, and after the battle nearly half their army had laid down their arms and surrendered to my men. The very next day, after ensuring they were taken care of despite being captives, I sent a messenger to speak to the governor of Iconion regarding the ransom of their men. 2 days later, I had my answer, as a guard found the messenger's head mounted on a spear near the camp that morning. I had no choice. I couldn't afford to leave men behind to guard the prisoners, and certainly couldn't let them go in case they attacked again, so I was forced to order their deaths. I can still hear their screams when I close my eyes. A death of battle is one thing, but to die helplessly just simply because of the greed of another who values money more than the lives of his men is just shocking. I look forward to meeting that man, and to show him that he will be judged for his sins by God himself. Between the losses suffered by the reinforcement armies during the battle as well as the prisoners being executed, both the reinforcement armies are no more. This will allow Alexios to be able to attack Anconia directly and lay the town to siege, without any worries about reinforcements coming to try and relieve the town. I take the opportunity to try and build up some siege equipment, but at this moment of time, my plan was to actually allow the enemy to come out and try and sally forth. This will allow me to try and fight them on a more open field, where I should hopefully be able to use my superior troops against them. I also hope to try and bring Limenos the Wrathful over to join as a reinforcement army, but unfortunately he didn't have any movement points. So I decided instead to have a look at the mercenary options. Now, seeing that both Armenian cavalry as well as these Alani troops were both available to hire, they're pretty expensive, 655 florins as well as a massive 595 florins, thing which I didn't realise at the time, so I just looked at it now. But I decided to hire both troops as this would allow me to have a good flanking force to try and deal with any reinforcement armies as well as extra cavalry to try and deal against the Dukes themselves. By hiring these mercenaries, Limenos has now got a new member of his platoon, a Italiach, which allows him to have cheaper recruitment as well as more looting, which is always going to be handy for someone who's going to be relying on his extermination and sacking options when it comes to the town. To try and help out Alexios a bit more, I finally moved the fleet over to the port, where I managed to bring my scout tour units under the command of Captain Germanos, which will take a couple of turns, about a year of travel before they can join up with Alexios outside Anconian. But as that goes, then he'll give Alexios a chance to be able to wear down the garrison force a bit more, as well as be able to build up the equipment he needs. With the east finally sorted out, at least for the moment, I move back towards the centre towards Constantinople, where Zacchaeus is still remains at the moment while an army's built up. I plan to use either Alexios or Zacchaeus at the time in order to try and deal with some of these rebel armies that seem to have sprouted up. Fortunately, I can still only recruit basic level troops in the area, where I believe at this moment the scouts are pretty more advanced. Heading over to the west now, I've checked out to see how Ioannes is doing, but I've forgotten that I hadn't actually ended the turn yet, so he's only just laid siege. Still going to take another turn though before I can actually move the archers under the command of Captain Theophorus in order to join up with the army. I did think at the time that with the ballista, I decided I was going to disband the unit. Not only is it costing me a little bit of money, but it's not really that effective against buildings, which is what I really wanted to use it for, so I decided to disband it. With everything else now done, I decided just to check out my agents. Theophorus Mitochitis, if I pronounced the name right. I apologise if I haven't, you have to remember I am terrible with the pronunciation sometimes. I decided to use him to speak to the Norwegians once more. I decided just to go for a basic trade agreement to get a little bit of extra money in. They were barely accepted it, but the most important thing is they did accept it. And hopefully, as the relationship maybe improves in the long run, I should be able to actually get more money as well as a more favourable reaction from them. With that done now, I decided to send Theophorus down towards France, even though I'm planning to eventually invade France as part of my victory conditions to try and get the 50 regions. I thought up until that point I can still at least try and get some money out of him. Still going to take a few turns though before I can actually get him over there to speak to one of the French. Back now near Brasov, my Princess Theodora, I've still decided I'm going to try and use it now to marry one of my allies. And with the fact that I was tempted as might have been to go for the Cuman Canaanite, I decided instead to send her up towards Poland. Apparently, though, there isn't anyone in the region to be able to marry, but I hope in a couple of turns when she eventually speaks with the governor there, I should be able to find out if there's anyone in the royal family I could marry her to. With anything else done then, I went ahead and ended the turn. During the end turn phase, I was quite surprised to see that a Venetian princess called Nicola has come to Belgrade in order to speak with the governor about having a ceasefire between our nations. Now, this was an interesting offer, although they've only wanted a ceasefire and haven't offered me anything else, especially since I need to deal with the Venetians part of the victory conditions, and I need to attack them in order to be able to make my way towards Italy. So I decided just to decline their offer. I was tempted to try and get them to become a vassal, but I doubt that was going to be the case. At the start of my next turn, I get a notification that the Polish senior duke is dead. This could be an interesting development in terms of Theodora at the time, as I was heading up there to maybe speak to one of the noble families, and perhaps she can marry into them. Having a look at the end of term report, it seems that the Fatimid Caliphate is still the current leader in pretty much all areas of rating in the world, although I am still number 3 in terms of military, so I wasn't that concerned. Sofia Castle is now available to be upgraded as well. Unfortunately though, I think I'm not going to have enough money for it. In fact, I think it cost about 3,000, so I wasn't able to do it. Alexios has got a couple of good traits, including gaining the rank of Commerce, which increases his loyalty and his hit points, as well as the fact that during his time in Constantinople, he's managed to visit Hagia Sophia and managed to get a level of piety in the process. Kaffa now has got his logging camp, which allows me to improve the public order a little bit, and I decided to spend what money I had to build a town watch, which should hopefully increase public order a bit better, and allow me to get some more troops in the area in case some of my neighbours, more than the Duchy of Kiev, decide to try and attack them for any reason. Finally then, just looking at diplomatic information, it seems now that the French and the English are now at war, although the Sicilians have now gained peace with an enemy, so unfortunately though, that means that they're going to be able to focus their armies a bit better against me. As my turn started on the west side of the empire, I decided to go and deal with Ioannes and his army first. I decided to move my cavalry to try and join up with the main army, but as you can see I haven't got enough room in the army to be able to put them all in. So I decided that the cavalry was quite important, especially compared to some of the troops I had there. So I decided to move all the cavalry in, and I decided to go and get rid of one of my units of Conteste, where I should be able to originally just swap them around before eventually just disbanding the unit of Conteste. But not really that important, and I wasn't going to need it anytime soon, so I just decided to go ahead and disband. With that in mind then, I decided to actually go to assault Ragusa castle at this point itself. Having a look at the battle deployment, as you can see, Ioannes is a good commander, but it seems that the enemy general Basello is actually even better. Though in fact he is nearly twice as good in terms of star ratings compared to Ioannes. Looking at the enemy army, it seems they've got an interesting mix of units. They've got 1 or 2 units of crossbowmen and archers, as well as these spearmen sergeants, mounted sergeants, urban militia, and normal spearmen, as well as of course the enemy bodyguard. A few men, although I do outnumber them, so I decided to go risk it and go for a resolved battle. It's a clear victory with 790 men killed. I might have been able to do better if I fought it on the field, but I thought it's okay. I can still use hopefully we can be better facilities to be able to retrain my men eventually, as well as keep an eye out for any enemy forces as they come to try and reinforce. I get the option then to decide what to do with regards to Ragusa. As tempted as it was to try and get a little bit of extra money from exterminating or sacking the settlement, I decided to go with Ioannes' title as chivalrous, and decided just to go ahead and occupy the settlement instead. This could cause some problems, but thankfully the Orthodox and Catholic faiths aren't that different, I reckon, compared to the Islamic faith over in the east. It seems during the battle, though, the Ioannes was actually severely wounded. This is going to cause some problems with his hit points as well as the movement of the army. But given that I'm going to have to wait now for the army to try and replenish, using the better facilities at Ragusa should hopefully give Ioannes plenty of time to be able to, restore him back to good health. I take a moment then just to check out what the facilities are like at Ragusa. I was quite pleasantly surprised. I'm going to have to repair a couple of buildings, but what was quite interesting is that I was right that The Ragusa is actually the same level of development as Corinth, and it's already got quite a few nice buildings already built there. Knight stables, a drill square, a mine, even a practice range for me to build my Toxote up. All very good buildings, and should allow me to actually retrain all my men as soon as, well, people become available. It seemed to reckon, given its level of development, that there was a chance that Ragusa might have been the Venetians' main recruitment centre, so capturing it would have dealt quite the heavy blow to the Venetians. But it allows me now to try and give the army time to replenish, as well as allow Ioannes to heal himself after his injuries. I decided to send Nicolaus down there to start converting the population over, and I'm going to have to see about building a church of some sort in there once I start getting a bit more money. I'm also going to have a look now to see about what I can do regarding some of my units. The Sclaviae, for example, are pretty weak at this point, with only 30 men each roughly, and something I'm going to have to try and deal with. Back in the centre of the Empire now, I decided I was going to try and make Zacchaeus a little bit better. I was hoping to try and pass along some of Alexios, my emperor's Ratune, over to Zacchaeus so he'd be able to improve his stats, as well as be able to ensure that these Ratune members continue. Unfortunately though, it seemed that all the men, such as the architect as well as the priest, I couldn't actually pass along. Or even with something like, for example, this Parakominos. I decided to try and move the seal of the Emperor over, and that was able to go along okay. But it seems that nothing else, none of the men, such as for example even Atatocus, no one could actually pass it over, which was going to be quite annoying, as I was hoping to try and preserve these platoon members, when Alexios eventually dies from old age, which at the age of 65 seems to be getting closer and closer. To try and use Alexios while he's still alive and take advantage of his good command, I decided to move all the troops available at Constantinople, as well as many of the troops currently available at Adrianople, in order to try and deal with some of these rebel armies that have sprung up in the centre. It seems a bit like overkill given the size of the army and size of these compared to the enemy, but looking at them, look at the troops they have available. For example, this one on the west has Scoutatoy swordsmen, where I'm unsure what is going on in the north. Now these Scoutatoy swordsmen are a lot better than any of my spearmen, so I decided to try and move them closer. Unfortunately they decided to retreat, and it's forced me to use Alexios to wait for another turn before he can actually attack them. Over in the eastern side now, I decided to move Limenos up to support Alexios' siege at Anconian. When it comes to actually assaulting the town, Limenos should hopefully be able to be used as a reinforcement army, allowing me to bring superior numbers against the garrison at Iconion. I also moved these Scoutatoy units closer so they can eventually join up with Alexios in the next turn. Their superior armor and training and stats should hopefully be able to help a little bit more in the siege assault. Finally then, I just make sure all the bishops are in the area to continue converting the population over to the Orthodox faith. This should hopefully allow me to deal with less public order issues when I eventually capture the area. Finally then, I decided to go and check out the rest of my agents. Theophorus up in the far north is still continuing to make his way over towards France, although it seems that he keeps getting stopped by armies along the way, a similar fate to that of Cosmus down in the far east. I got to back now to check on Theodora. It's still going to take one more turn until I can actually get her to speak to the Polish, but I should hopefully then be able to get something out of her for it. Speaking of Cosmus, he's still moving slowly but surely towards his minerals of choice over in the east. Given his age, I'm surprised it's taken so long for him to get over there. It's quite unbelievable at this point. With everything else then done, I decided to end the turn and just watch as my fleet continues to move towards Gdańsk, and Theodora moves towards the Polish town up north. At the start of my next turn, I've been given a new mission by the Council of Nobles. They want me to actually take the settlement of Ankara, with a 2,000 florin reward for doing so. This is something I was planning to do anyway, so it was no hassle for me, and it gives me 15 turns to do it. Plenty of time to attack Anconia and capture it, before heading towards Ankara. It seems now that the Kingdom of France has become the most powerful faction in regards to financial matters, although the Fatimid Caliphate, which is going to be quite annoying when I actually attack them later, is still the most powerful faction in the world at the moment. Heraclius, my cap general, I should say, that has been joining Ioannes so far, has now become the Catapanda of Ragusa, which increases the tax I can get from it, as well as lowering his reduction slightly, as well as being given the rank of Mega Constantinos, which increases a few of his stats even more. My construction, a few things have been built, including the shipwright to Constantinople, which should hopefully give me access now towards better and more trade fleets in the process. It seems now as well that two of the things, the Cumancanite and the Krashmians, oh Christ, I can never say their name, have gone to war. I thought I was actually an ally with both of them, but it seems not to be the case, only with the Cumancanite, so that's pretty good. Theodora now I moved finally to speak to the Polish, and I already got the offer to marry her to the faction leader, something I decided to go with straight away. It's a balanced proposal which they actually rejected, apart from they wanted 310 florins. Now for me, 310 florins is a pretty good dowry to give to Theodora, though I was hoping not to have given any money considering how charming she is, so I decided just to accept the offer. So with that now, Theodora is now married to the Polish king, or duke I should say, Senior Duke Vassal. Have you seen this Roman bride of the Duke's yet, my Lord Cyril? The Duchess is a beauty indeed, with a grace and charm I have not seen before. She has certainly made an impression with the court in the short time she's been with us. I couldn't believe how quickly Duke Volitile has fallen for her either. Did you not see him at the ball a month ago? No? All it took was one look and he was smitten with her. All the beauties of the court for him to choose, but he might as well have been blind for all apart from Princess Theodora. It must be said that it is a good match. Not only does the Duke seem happy, which means the court is happy. This strengthens the ties between us and the Roman Empire. I have heard as much as you, that the armies of the Empire have been marching to reclaim their lands lost 2 centuries past. I hope this marriage means that Polish lands will remain with the Polish, should the Empire achieve what they've set out to do. With the marriage now complete between Theodora and her new husband, not only will this allow better ties between the Roman Empire and the Polish, but if I remember right, or I could be wrong, might allow me to eventually even have a claim to their lands from any children between the Union, assuming anything happens to them in the future, although of course I could be wrong. So if I am wrong, please let me know in the comments. Going back to the campaign turn, I was hoping to actually be able to upgrade Sophia at this point, but unfortunately I still haven't got the money, especially after having to spend the 310 florins in order to marry off Theodora, so I'm going to have to wait until the next turn. I did spend some of the money though in order to repair the knight stables that currently at Ragusa Castle, as well as be able to start the building of a small Orthodox chapel, as well be able to convert the population of Ragusa over to the Orthodox faith and help public order out in the long run. Back in the centre of the Empire, I sent my Basilius, my Emperor Alexios, after the rebel brigade army, so I decided to automatically resolve, and it was a clear victory thanks to his superior grasp of tactics. Only 20 men killed. With that now I can send him off after the next army, which again decides to try and retreat, and in fact manages to retreat around an ally, one of the Cumancanite that seem to have appeared in my lands as well. Hopefully in the next turn I'll be able to use them as an ally as well, and be able to drive off the rebels from the centre once and for all. Once those have been dealt with then, I can go after the other ones, such as the one outside Thessalonica over in the west, and outside Smyrna in the east. Although these are going to be a bit difficult, I'm surprised the enemy rebels have managed to recruit such high-tier troops such as Scouter units, considering that I can't even get them in the eastern provinces at the moment, and yet they've got a whole army of them. Anyway, going back to the east, as you can see, we've got reinforcements trying to relieve the situation outside Limenos. A couple of units, pretty easy to deal with for the most part, so I sent Limenos to Raffle to go and deal with them. And even though the balance of power is in my favour, I decided to fight this one out in the battle as well, just to give him a go on the battlefield. After allowing my troops to deploy and then start the battle, I went for a rather standard formation for my army, at least for me anyway, with my Cortatoid forming the main battle line, with some Contestae on the front line end to be able to use their short-range javelins, and put my Toxotae at the back in order to fire over my troops. The enemy is deployed on top of this hill. I didn't want to go up the steep hill and allow them to have the benefit of charging down the hill towards me, so I decided instead to put my army over on the side where it's less of a slope and should hopefully be a bit more easier for my troops to try and attack. I sent the rest of the army and then kept them in formation, and then put Limenos in the back line as well as a unit of cavalry on each flank for me to be able to swing around to attack. I decided to go forward and fast forward time just in order to get things done a bit quicker. And it seems there was a break in the cloud as well, as all of a sudden the map got a bit brighter as well. As my army moved into position, though, it seemed that the enemy army decided they weren't willing to wait and decided they should come down the hill to attack me instead. This isn't really the most ideal thing for me, since they've got a lot more, all their troops pretty much are actually archery units. So I'm going to have to actually go there and fight them if I actually don't want to pepper my troops to death. So I get my Alani troops over on the left flank moving, as well as my Armenian cavalry on the right to charge straight towards those Turkish archers. I was hoping that with such heavy cavalry charging in, I should hopefully be able to deal with them. And while on the left flank I sent the Alani cavalry after the Fari cavalry. I thought with missile cavalry being against my light ones, I should hopefully still be able to beat them back. It seems now that the enemy Turkmen cavalry have decided to try and move down, and then might allow my archers and my javelins to attack, although I didn't really want them to rely on using fire arrows, which in my experience are a bit less accurate and do less damage. So I don't know if I actually switched them over to normal missiles at any point in the battle, but I think given the fact that their cavalry have now got a bit stuck thanks to my Amani ones, I decided to send the Alani straight into the back of the horse archers. The Armenians didn't do too badly. They managed to chase off these Safari lancers, these heavy cavalry that the Seljuks happen to have. Although it seems now they've actually somehow managed to take a whole bunch of casualties all of a sudden. In fact, the Armenians seem to have lost nearly 30 men within a couple of seconds, despite the fact that the lancers decided to retreat. I have no idea how that happened. But with that, the enemy has now only got half their forces remaining, and decided to start bringing in the rest of the army to try and help out. At the moment, the Armenian cavalry are now seem to be doing pretty well against the Safari lancers. In fact, now the fate seems certain. So, despite the casualties they have suffered, I should hopefully be able to do too badly. What was amazing though for me though during this battle is actually trying to deal with these Fari cavalry that have been charging up and down the hill. These are only supposed to be missile cavalry. In fact, they're supposed to be reasonably easy to kill. I thought they, at least I thought they would be. It turned out to be that they were one of the most difficult units in the enemy army to actually fight. The Safari lancers weren't too bad. In fact, as you can see here, with my light cavalry charging into them, it actually was enough to cause a lot of damage against these lancers. These Fari cavalry, they charge in. It took a lot of troops to try and deal with them. I was actually very surprised.
The enemy general.
Here we go, the enemy general now started to retrieve, and we managed to capture him as well, so that might be some useful now as well. In a second now, you'll be able to see exactly what I mean with regards to this Fari cavalry. In fact, now as you can see, they've got 55 men, and victory seems certain. Despite the fact they've got heavy Armenian cavalry charged in, as well as my Alani cavalry. But it seems that they're going to be winning, even though I would have fought with my superior troops. Despite that lack of numbers, it might have been enough of an edge. I decided to send Limenos and his cavalry in as well to try and charge in and help out, as well as the units of territory. As you can see then, victory still seems certain. In fact, I was pretty surprised at the audacity of this Fari cavalry to be able to hold off against these forces. Thankfully though, with the number of territory deciding to charge, and it was enough to break the Fari cavalry and cause them to retreat. But I was just amazed about the amount of bodies left behind simply because of them. In fact, if I ever get an opportunity to be able to hire any Fari mercenaries, I might be willing to try and do so. Given now that the missile cavalry, it seems that my Alani cavalry will not be able to catch up to them, which is going to be really annoying, as it means this Fari cavalry is going to be available for a later battle. With everything else though, I decided then to cancel the battle with a clear victory towards me. But since my Alani and my Armenian cavalry have managed to do pretty well, although now they've only left with a grand total of 9 men between them, it means that they're not going to be that useful in the upcoming battles. Why in the name of God did I even hire you bastards in the first place? Your captain promised me the finest cavalry in the east, horsemen born to the saddle, able to take on anything that the Seljuks could bring to the battle. And what happened? You couldn't even do the fucking job I paid you for. By the bollocks of Cain, not only did you attack without my orders, but you got yourselves all killed in a tiny skirmish. What bloody use are you, you sons of goats? Get out of my fucking sight right now before I have you all torn in two by your own horses. If you value your worthless hides, stay out of my way. I'll make sure next time you take as many of the enemy with you before you die. swear, as much as I hate the Seljuks, if I can get my hands on some of this fiery cavalry in my army, I would. Then those Turkish bastards won't stand a chance. As it seems pretty obvious, it seems that Limenos is not happy with the mercenaries that he recruited. Although, foolishly for me, I actually forgot, I think, to actually disband them. So I've still got these 2 mercenary units of 9 men in total, still taking money out of my coffers for just sitting around and doing nothing. Back though to the prisoners captured, it was tempted to try and ransom them back, but we are talking about Limenos here and its hatred towards the Seljuks. So it was a pretty easy option actually. I just went ahead and executed the prisoners. With the reinforcement army now dealt with, I brought him back to Anconia to try and reinforce Alexios' army. Moved the scouts into position and actually started the assault against Anconia. Now I was coming up pretty much to the end of this episode, so I decided instead, with the balance of power very much in my favour, and the enemy consisted mainly of spear militia and horse archers, I thought I was just going to go ahead and auto-resolve. So once I had a look to see what some of the units were, for example some more horse archers, I went ahead and auto-resolved. I figured it would be best for me. I do outnumber them the 3-2 to 1 odds, and it was a clear victory, although I did lose over 900 men of Alexios's, and 371 of Limenos's. Quite annoying, but it means I'm going to have to wait once more for his army to sort itself out in Anconia before I can actually carry on with the eastern expansion. Hopefully it won't be too long, and I'll try and bring in more reinforcements from the other areas. Now back with the cash settlement options. I can imagine that Limenos, as one of the armies involved, was actually tempted to try and actually execute or sack some of the members of Iconion, but I decided instead I was just going to occupy it once more. Alexios is going to be here for a little while, hopefully long enough to actually convert the populace over. Limenos obviously a bit pissed off for that, as you can imagine, with a name like the Raffle, decides to go head straight towards Ankara. He'll be able to get there in the next turn and start the siege, and I imagine he's going to bring some harsh measures to the people of Ankara after being allow him to actually get out the frustration and anger that he feels towards the Seljuks. With the Anconia note, I take a second to try and repair some of the buildings with the money that I got, as well as be able to build a small Orthodox church once more to convert the populace over to the true faith, and deal with the religious unrest I'm dealing with, as well as lower the taxes, which now has managed to put the population and public order to them being more okay. They don't really mind. It seems that Alexios, though, was quite severely wounded in the upcoming battle, the battle with the Revolt. So, for him, having a chance to rest at Anconian will be a pretty good deal for him, as well as for the rest of his men. With the town then done, I decided I was going to try and sort out the army a little bit, although I did cock up a little bit. I accidentally put the wrong unit of Scoutatoi into the other, so it left me in the end with a full regiment of Scoutatoi, but also only 21 men in the other, so I was forced then to actually disband one of them. I'm not going to have a chance to be able to recruit any more over in the east until I actually head further east in towards the castle of Caesarea. It's going to be Alexios' next target, which will allow me then to be able to hopefully get better troops and be able to rebuild the armies of both Limenos and Alexios for the future campaign. And at this point then, I decided I was going to bring the episode to a close. So, thank you for watching everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you tune in next time for the next episode of The Phoenix Rises.